Hey everybody, it's Chris Bumber here again at Cinemacon. Wow, what a busy day of panels. So I just came out of the Universal panel, and earlier today we had the Disney panel. Now, I'm sure you're all wanting to know if they showed anything from Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. They did show an extended chase sequence that goes through the Tangiers Market that has Indiana Jones and Phoebe Waller-Bridge pursuing Mads Mikkelsen. That said, though, I think it was the same footage that was shown at Star Wars Celebration, so I can't say that it was world premiere footage, but, you know, it was a good, 7-minute clip or something and a pretty extensive action scene from the movie, and it looks like a lot of fun. I have a little bit of reservations about kind of the stunt work and some of the CGI that's going on in the movie, but, you know, Ford looks really capable still, despite his age, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge actually looks like she's pretty decent as an action star, and it's very much kind of the footage that we saw anyway was very much a two-hander between the two of them. But I mean, Indiana Jones is in classic kind of Indiana Jones fashion in this, so I don't know, I was very impressed by the footage that I saw, and I'm looking forward to seeing the full movie. Besides that, we saw a musical number from The Little Mermaid, which looks fun, although it's such a dimly lit movie. I feel like unless you go see this movie in Dolby Vision or something like that, it's going to be really hard to see, just because all the under the sea stuff is just shot in such dim lighting. I mean, they're definitely going for stylization. That said, I think Melissa McCarthy is going to be great as Ursula, and I liked Hailey Bailey quite a bit as Ariel. It seems like she's actually quite faithful to the cartoon. They showed a little bit of footage from Haunted Mansion as well, which is definitely very Pirates of the Caribbean style, but we didn't get much more than a trailer. So all in all, the Disney presentation was quite mild. I think the big centerpiece was about 20 minutes from Elemental, but I'd actually already seen that, and you can read all about it in my Elemental kind of Pixar roundup report that I did earlier this year. But I mean, it definitely looks very much in the vein of Inside Out and kind of a nice reset for the company, and the 3D footage is absolutely amazing. But now on to the Universal panel, because I think that's actually what everybody's going to be most interested in. So it started with our first look at the full trailer for Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. And Christopher Nolan actually came out on the stage to present the movie himself, or present the footage. And he did say that the trailer is going to be hitting theaters with Guardians of the Galaxy 3 in 2 weeks. The footage that we saw was amazing. I mean, Nolan said that for him, there's no more important story than J. Robert Oppenheimer's story, because he is the creator of the modern world in a lot of ways. And he's right, because we all live in the atomic age now. He made the modern world for better or for worse, and I think that there's a little bit of both in this story. One thing that Nolan said that hasn't really been talked about is that when they were testing the A-bomb, there was a remote possibility, remote but real, that their experiments, and when they set off the bomb, could have set fire to the atmosphere and reduced Earth to a cinder. So that's part of the movie as well. It's a mixture of black and white and color. It looks like most of the movie is in color. All the scenes in Los Alamos are in color, with some of the Washington stuff in black and white. We got to look at the extensive cast: Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr., Matt Damon, but you know, most important of all is obviously Cillian Murphy as J. Robert Oppenheimer, and this could be a defining film for his career. I mean, I was really blown away by the footage. I love Ludwig Göransson's score. Very aggressive, though. You know, Christopher Nolan loves his aggressive sound mixes, and I can already see the headlines now, people complaining about the dialogue being hard to understand. I didn't really have that problem with this, but I could see how some people might grumble, because, man, he really does like an aggressive mix, and I don't think he's a huge fan of ADR. But anyway, I was blown away, pun intended, by what I saw from Oppenheimer. We saw a bit of footage from Fast X, but it was mostly just an extended trailer. I think the one that actually just dropped last week, but the whole stage a lot of the cast came out. Vin Diesel came out and gave a very long-winded speech that I'm sure you'll be reading about in the Hollywood Reporter or Variety. It was a little bit wacky, very off-book, but, you know, classic Vin Diesel. He did call the exhibitors soldiers on the front lines, which gave me a chuckle, but what he did reveal that's pretty interesting is that Fast X, the sequel, isn't going to be Fast 11 or whatever Roman numeral they choose. It's actually going to be Fast X Part 2. So I thought that was pretty noteworthy. Besides that, we saw really cool footage from David Leitch's The Fall Guy, which of course is an adaptation of the classic TV show with Lee Majors. So Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt star. Ryan Gosling plays a stuntman who broke his back and now is an alcoholic valet. his ex-girlfriend Emily Blunt is directing this big kind of Star Wars space opera. It's her first movie. Her leading man, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, is a mess. He won't do any of his own stunts. Gosling has to step in, do all these amazing stunts. But then, of course, Aaron Taylor Johnson's character disappears. The studio goes nuts, wants to fire Emily Blunt. So he decides, in order to win her back, he's going to find Aaron Taylor Johnson, who, of course, is totally hooked up with the mob. Cue lots of action. It looks like a really good action comedy. But the funny thing about it is they did this amazing stunt show before the presentation that was just completely insane by David Leitch's action company, and Ryan Gosling wouldn't come out on stage with Emily Blunt because he kept asking if it was safe, and he said it looked too dangerous. And then Emily Blunt said, "We're actors, we don't go for this kind of shenanigans," which I thought was kind of funny. And they both were vehement in the fact that they are not doing their own stunts in this movie, and they were actually singling out the stuntmen by names, which I thought was pretty cool. I mean, it looks like a blast. It comes out next March. We also saw footage from Wicked that everybody's gonna be talking about. That movie doesn't come out for over a year, but we saw behind the scenes footage. Cynthia Erivo as the Wicked Witch of the West, Ariana Grande as the Good Witch, Glinda. I don't know much about the stage musical, I must admit, but it looks like a pretty visual, spectacular movie. One thing that's interesting is that you'd think something like this would be very CGI heavy, but the sets are almost all practical. John M. Chu, the director, actually said that they planted 9,000 tulips for a tulip garden, which shows, the dedication to the craft, I think. We also saw some really funny footage from Strays. Will Ferrell came out on stage with the dog Sophie that plays him in the movie. They used real dogs, they're not CGI animals, they just CGI'd the mouths. I think people are going to love this movie. It's foul. And the new trailer, which should come out soon, ends with an amazing cameo by a beloved 80s, 90s, and 2000s character actor who's been making a lot of faith-based movies recently, so you wouldn't expect to see him show up in a movie like Strays playing himself. But he looks like he's having a whale of a time, and it looks like a really funny movie. So we also saw some footage from some new Focus Features movies. There are 3 that look really interesting. There's Asteroid City from Wes Anderson, of course. Not much that we haven't already seen in the trailer. Mix of aspect ratios. Jason Schwartzman, Scarlett Johansson are part of this kind of town of misfits that an alien craft kind of passes over, and they're all quarantined by the government. Looks like a classic Wes Anderson movie. We also saw some footage from Drive Away Dolls, which comes from Ethan Coen and Trisha Cook, and it doesn't look at all like a Coen Brothers movie. Of course, it's not the Coen Brothers, it's only one of the Coens. It actually looks a lot like a Tarantino movie where Margaret Qualley and Geraldine Vishnawathan, they play 2 lovers who go on a car trip. They rent a car that, of course, is full of some mobsters' nefarious goods. The mobster's played by Coleman Domingo. He's hunting them down. Has an all-star cast: Pedro Pascal, Matt Damon, Beanie Feldstein. It looks really fun, but very much not like a Coen Brothers movie. People are going to be really surprised when they see this trailer. It really does look like he's kind of doing Tarantino. I guess we'll see how that actually goes when the movie itself comes out. I kind of love the Coen Brothers doing their own thing, but then again, I think he also has to establish an identity separate from his brother, so that is kind of interesting in itself. We also saw a trailer, which I think looks really good, for a movie called The Holdovers, which is directed by Alexander Payne and stars Paul Giamatti. So it seems in some ways kind of like a thematic sequel to Sideways, although it's set in the 70s. If you remember Sideways, Paul Giamatti played this teacher who was an alcoholic and his life was kind of going down the drain. So in this one, Giamatti plays the headmaster of this prep school, who of course his life has gone down the drain, but he's much older this time. He's left in charge of a bunch of kids who basically don't go home for Christmas. They hate him, he hates them. There's non-stop F-bombs in the trailer, but of course, the kids get to like him. It looks like, in a weird way, like Goodbye Mr. Chips if it was more contemporary and filled with F-bombs and swearing. I think it looks great. I mean, I think that could be potentially like an Oscar-worthy movie, which is good because Payne's last movie, Downsizing, was pretty awful, but before that, I thought he was a really great director. I think this one will probably play all the fall film festivals, and I wouldn't be surprised if Paul Giamatti got an Oscar nomination. Anyway, Universal presentation was really good. I saw a lot of footage from their horror movies, which I'm going to talk about in a video that you can check out on Joblo Originals. More to come from Cinemacon, so stay tuned.